Today, I want to talk to you about my own personal journey with business growth and the biggest acknowledgement that I've seen for myself that has really made the biggest difference. And this has got to do actually not with business at all, but with separating from my husband and actually conscious reconnecting. Now, why am I even going to go here in the first place? I'm going to go here because what I really do understand is that business and your personal life, there is no separation. You're using the exact same energy for both. The way you show up for business, the way you show up for relationships, and may not on the facade appear the same, but energetically is exactly the same, right? You are your energy. You bring that energy to everything that you do. So whether it's business, whether it's walking the dog, whether it's relationships, whether it's parenting, that energy is there. And that energy will affect the outcome that you get in every single area of life. Some things it'll affect more than others, some things it'll affect less. But it's there, and your energy doesn't lie. And this is one reason why I knew that doing the inner work around my relationship was so freaking important. We all know that when we separate from someone, or even when we're thinking about separating from someone, we have so much resentment, we have anger, we have all the reasons why what they've done wrong, why they haven't showed up the right way. But there's something that I knew from a long time ago is that whatever is going on between us, whatever is going on between me, whatever I'm blaming them for, however I think they're not showing up correctly, is that they're in my world. And only I have the power within me to say what's in my world and what's not. I am a magnetic being. We are all magnetic beings. So the energy that I am holding brings things to my world. So my question was always, why am I bringing in this? This is not what I want. This does not feel good. This takes me away from who I am. I totally lost myself. I'd become a person that I didn't know who she was. I'd become a person that didn't really know what direction I was. I didn't know how to show up every day. And so this is why I used my relationship to do the mirror work. And there's so much talk in the personal development world about doing the shadow work. And while I get it, for me, the mirror work is so much easier to do, and I get immediate feedback from the universe. I get immediate feedback from life. And this is really interesting because what is showing up for you in your world externally is mirroring what is happening internally. And this is where we really get to and have to drop the ego. There is none of this I am right or I am wrong. It's literally, what is my external world showing me? Because it's showing me stuff that's happening in here. And I've got to take ownership of that. And I remember going for a walk with my husband at the time. And I asked him to work on a couple of things. One thing was communication. And the other thing was the way he saw our finances. And it was really obvious to me how these were areas that I could see he needed improvement. It was so obvious. I couldn't talk to him. Everything that I was saying would get shut down. Like the communication between the two of us was, let's just call it absolute rubbish, non-existent shit. Non-connecting. What he was just talking to me wasn't landing with me. What I was saying to him wasn't landing with him. It was terrible. It was a mess. But what I did over the time, before separating and during our separation, was to do that mirror work. So anytime anyone, not just him, but showed up angry, I would go, what's happening in here? Where is there anger in me that I need to release? When they were showing me that I needed to work, I wanted them to work on their money story, I worked on my money story. And let's face it, if we've ever worked on money story, we know money is a continuous story to always work on. So it's not as if I've sorted out my money story. Yeah, for the moment. For the moment we have. Until the next level comes along and have a look. And sometimes it's just tweaking that we need to do. But there's always an element to our money story, because there's always an element to us, and there's always a way that we look at money, and there's always a way we perceive money as an individual and as a society. So the more I did the inner work around what was showing up for me, the more I changed. But more importantly, the more connected I became. Because the more inner work that I did, I was able to strip back the facade of how I was showing up, and to close the distances between that and who I really was, and learning to show up more authentically, more myself. But the other thing that this really helped me do was it helped me sit in the observing seat. The observer says that blue is blue, square is square, round is round, a wall is a wall. It doesn't say it's good or bad, or it's too big or too small, or it's icky or it's amazing. It just notices what is. And when you can start noticing what is with other people and with yourself, you allow yourself to transform. You allow healing to effortlessly take place without the resistance. The resistance of, no, I'm seeing this the right way. Because reality is there's a million ways to see the same thing. But what's most important is the way that you're seeing it the right way for you? How do you know? Because it feels good. It doesn't feel judgy. It feels aligned. It feels effortless. It feels effortless. It feels effortless. There's no worries about it. There is a sense of grace and compassion that goes along with that, that says that my way works for me, but it doesn't necessarily work for you. And I get that. And your way works for you, and that doesn't necessarily work for me. And I get that. And not only has this changed my world externally, it's changed also the way that I see myself, but it's changed the way that I function as a practitioner. It changes the way that I show up with my clients in helping them find their way, whatever that is. Because in reality is that my way works well for me, but does it work for you? Maybe, maybe not. So what way does work for us? And that's why stripping back the facade, the layers, the ego, the stories we've been telling ourselves, the stories that have kept us safe, but yet don't work for us in alignment with the future that we want. We objectively look at that and we get to reconstruct it all. We get to go back to basics and ask ourselves, how do I want to look at this? How do I want to feel about this? And while doing this work through separating, and during the time that we were separated, that it showed me that everything that I wanted him to work on was exactly what I needed to work on. Not only for being in a relationship with him, because the intent was never to get back together. That was never, ever, ever the focus. But it showed me how I was showing up with him. It showed me how I was showing up with pretty much everyone, including how I was showing up in my business. Now, when it comes to communication in business, that's marketing. That's how do I grow? That's the fundamentals of business. It's not only communicating with your clients that are sitting right in front of you, but communicating with your audience, whether they are hot clients, warm, cold, or clients, whatever. Potential, just people that you want to inform. The way you're communicating to everyone is actually the same energy. How open are you? How closed off are you? And this is where I've learned, and I'm still moving through it, that I was really closed off. That there are certain parts of me that I didn't, not necessarily own, but didn't fall into, didn't become natural to me. And it's that part that needs the healing, continual healing. And as I said, I'm still working through it. Is how do I show up? How do I lean into my authentic self? How do I allow myself to open up? And this all stems back not from a relationship. The relationship was just a trigger. The relationship just highlighted the areas that we need to work on. And I love this with relationships because a lot of my girls that are still dating, not in a long-term relationship, sort of in that zone of dating different men. And I'm like, this is a really good way for you to see the inner wounds that you still need to work through. It's like, go and have a date and see who you energetically attract. How do they show up? Are they mirroring back at you that you need to heal? Is it about boundaries? Is it about falling into your feminine? Is it about knowing that feminine is actually not about weakness, that feminine has a beautiful strength underlying it? Is it how you communicate? Are you attracting men that are just emotionally shut off? Oh my God, the amount of women that I hear this from. But what part of us is attracting a man that is shut off? It is only part of us that is also shut off. It's taking full ownership over where you are, because the moment we take full ownership over where we are, we take full ownership over our growth. We take full ownership over what is possible for us to achieve in the future. And it is once we both had done a lot of inner work, both me and my ex-husband, that we realized how much love was still there. And we realized how we could show up differently. And one of our agreeable prerequisites for re-entering into a relationship was, now that we'd done the inner work separately, and we did the inner work separately not to get back together, but for ourselves, which is the most important reason to do the inner work, then we could do it together. We can do it with a relationship container in mind, and having the right coach and mentor to guide you through that is so important. And we had the most amazing relationship mentor to really give us some really practical advice, as well as doing the healing work around how we showed up and how we can show up and how we want to show up in a relationship. Because here's the other thing, there is no right or wrong way for you to show up in a relationship. There is the way that you want to show up. There is what you want to get out of a relationship. And that could be different for every single one of you out there. But it's also the continual work that we are dedicated to doing as we nourish constantly and consistently nourish the container that is our relationship. And for those of you that are parents out there, it's so easy to get focused on just showing up as a parent. And when you own a business as well, it's so easy to get focused on showing up as a business owner, as a business builder, as an entrepreneur, as a healer. But knowing that these are just external roles that are given to you by yourself, that you get to show up from who you are. And it's the acknowledgement of, I get to nourish the container of the relationship, as well as the container of the family, as well as the container of the business, and see them very differently and have different intentions upon them, different focuses, different times. So boundaries became very important to me as a woman. How do I separate the time that I give my business from the time that I give my family, from the time that I give my husband? And the one thing that we do consistently every single week without fail, which has helped our relationship tenfold, is setting aside an hour a week. This hour a week is for us to come together, to talk, to connect, to deepen our bond. This is a safe container for us to bring forward any issues that we are having, but to also bring forward the wins, to celebrate what is working, to connect with ourselves, to come up with common goals for us, to really help us work on that communication aspect of self, of our relationship, and how we show up in our relationship. And what this does, yes, it helps us work in our communication, but it gives us a container to feel safe in giving and receiving in that communication. And when you feel safe in giving and receiving in communications in any relationship or any friendship or any partnership, then you find other ways to show up in other areas of your life. For an example, this YouTube channel is very new for me. And why I've chosen to do YouTube is because it allows me to fall into me. It gives me a container to be safe in, to have the time and space to talk from my heart, to talk from the divine. Whether I find that when I jump onto a social channel, whether it be Instagram, and I'm time restricted, like time restriction is something that I don't work well with, and I don't show up as my authentic self. But when I do it in a container like this, I can lean into that. I can fall into the space. I can be held by the non-restriction of time. And therefore, then I can just chop this up into bite-sized chunks that help me on those channels. So when you embrace one area of your life and you give it that space to rise, when you give it that space to develop, to feel safe, to feel heard, that starts to filter in to all the other areas in your life, and you'll receive those downloads, you'll receive those aha moments, you'll receive that inspiration on how to do that. But it needs to start with you through the action and the intention behind it all. And for us in conscious reconnecting. It is about growth. It is about expansion together. And it's about also allowing us as individuals to grow and expand and to get curious and observe how we as individuals are showing up. And there's one thing new that I'm finding is happening in the relationship because of that. And that is, it's okay to sit in the unknown. It's okay to sit in the uncertainty. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to sit in the moment of, I'm not sure where that's coming from. I'm not sure why I'm showing up like that. But there is something within me that is rising to release. And it's allowing yourself to get curious on what that is. Whether before it was always being showing up as being right. No, I know why I'm feeling. I know you're making me feel this way. I know this situation is making me feel off. No, that's not right. It's, you know what? I am acting this way for a reason. And I know you're just the trigger. I know life is presenting to me a situation to trigger in something deeper. Because it's time for that to release and to be worked through. And that's where we have so much control over our path, our future, what we do, how we do it. That full deep ownership over to how we're showing up and what's showing up in our existence. And on the other side, there is them taking ownership for how they showed up in that moment. Yes, I was too blunt. Yes, I didn't articulate as well as I could. Yes, I should have paused. Yes, I shouldn't have done two things at once and then given you not my full attention. And I know that triggered you. So there is the ownership over both sides from both parties, and that's how growth flourishes. That's how growth occurs. And that's where the gold is when creating partnership. It's all parties taking full ownership for the way they're showing up with themselves and with each other. And it's overflowing into business. It's the same with the finances. It's yes, let me look at my money story. I know I've got money story issues. So let's stop blaming other people for how they're showing up with their money stories and turn the mirror back at me. How am I showing up with my money? Do I have everything sorted? Am I at the level where I want to? What do I need to have a look at? What tangible things do I need to do to help the flow of finances? The moment we take ownership, we can really direct it in the direction of our goals. And then life will dance with us. The universe will dance. The moment we take a step, it'll take a step and guide us in the next direction. Then all of a sudden you know it. Dance is like life is floating with you. It's flowing with you. Opportunities are coming. Aha moments are there. People to give you knowledge are just there. And you're like, yes, I know that because I can feel the energy alignment because I'm in alignment with my goals and you're here to help me along that way. I know I need some piece of wisdom from you. Or you get a download, oh, that's how I'm going to show up on social media. That doesn't allow, that feels too restrictive for me, but this works for me. And this is how I can make it work on all the rest of them. Come back to me. Come back to you. And work from the inside out. And that's how I've seen so much growth within myself over the last 3 years, my business, and us as a relationship. God, their household is so much different now. So much different. But because I took charge of me and made it different. I hope this episode has helped someone out there look at things in a different way. And if you know of someone that this can also help, please share it with them. Separating and looking at ourselves is not an easy thing to do. But when you do the inner work, as tough as it can be sometimes, the rewards always pay.